This episode, using artificial intelligence to troubleshoot. Well, I was discussing yesterday. I had a friend of mine call me. He's a handyman, just like we are. He had a mini split, and he'd been having a problem with this mini split. And after discussing these things, I had never seen this particular problem that he had. And I said, this is a perfect opportunity. I said, if you've got access to an AI program, perfect opportunity. I said, take all that information, plug it in, and basically, he got an answer. I thought we might as well have a discussion about this one because basically a show is born. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled Using AI to Troubleshoot. And to help me explain, it's the ever faithful AI master, Mr. Johnny. Johnny, what is going on with you this week?
Yeah, the guy who really has artificial intelligence.
Who needs it? No, just kidding. It's just a joke.
Let me just start this thing off now that you bring up this topic. I remember back when I first got into the computer business, and that was back in the middle to late 80s. And we had a discussion on this thing. I remember just in the hallway with some of the head of the technical department at the company I was working at, which was, I think it was either Burroughs or Sperry or something like that.
Doesn't matter.
And the problem, the thing that, he's like, well, we're really not there because, how would you describe a dog versus a cat versus, okay, they both have ears, they both have a snout, they both have tails. You know what he was getting at, right? I mean, there's no way to really just to distinguish this, so, now it is kind of
at that point,
and it was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, how is that thing going to work? So it's kind of funny now, all these years later, we come to this point where, man, this thing is like, you're talking to somebody.
Well, that and more. And you have all this data out there, right? And it's data from all sorts of different sources, manufacturers, and guys in the field and people that don't know anything about anything. You have all these different data sources that you now can draw from, right?
Yeah, I guess my point there is that it's come to this point now that it's really can put things together. It can really, it's almost like it sees, right? It does see things. And that really now lends itself to guys like us, that we are very close to augmented reality using AI, so you maybe put on some glasses and you're working on something and
I can show you.
And I can show you. That's exactly where this thing is.
Not quite there yet, but
we are so on the precipice of that whole thing. I mean, look at how far this is. So let's talk about that for a second. You had a story, and then I can add in a little bit, but.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started it in the intro, but I'm going to just elucidate on it a bit more. So a buddy of mine calls me. This is what we did back in the old days, right, Johnny? When you had a problem and you didn't have the experience, you did one of, like, if you were working on a car, you did one of two things. You either called up your buddy who was a mechanic who really had maybe more experience than you did, or you looked into like a Chilton's book, if you remember the old Chilton's books. And same thing with HVAC. You picked up a reference book, or you call somebody that's in the business and you get this. He came up with this one thing that we troubleshooted we did the troubleshooting process that we would normally do. And it wasn't any of those things that were kind of self-evident to what we know about the systems. And that's when I said to him, well, do you have any access to an AI thing? And he goes, well, no, I don't. But my son does. And I don't, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he gets his son to type in. I said, and be really specific, because I think it really matters if you could, with today, because of all the sources that are out there between Reddit and, there's a Reddit post on almost anything in the whole wide world, it seems like. And some of that from the troubleshooting standpoint, especially with equipment, some of that stuff's super specific. Like they get down to model numbers and part numbers, and, they can get to serial numbers to a degree. but you get in with this really specific questions and it comes back with answers that are born of experience. It's the hive mind, if you want to call it that. I hate to use that, but it is what it is. And a good AI program, at least the ones that I've used, which is a couple, Chat GPT and Grok and a few others, and you get out there and they basically crawl the web, right? I could do all that research. I could, but why do I have to when I can type in the description and it does it for me, right? And I think you agree with that, right, John?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at this point, that it's basically it's gathering a lot of the information that and scraping it from the web, right?
Yep. Yep.
But it's also starting to get intelligence behind that. It's not just some big data lake that's out there that we're drawing from. This thing now is starting to put some answers together for us.
Yeah, it scrapes that data and puts together the consensus answer, right? Is how I look at it, right?
Yeah, that's kind of where it's at right now. But where it's headed very quickly is that it's thinking, it's doing some things in front of any of the other comments or any other things that happen. Anyways, we won't get into that right now. But it's a tremendous tool for us as technicians or whatever. Don't trust everything it says. Okay, number one, don't trust everything it says. But
same thing as you wouldn't in the old days. You didn't trust your buddy necessarily. Well, it was a place to start,
right? But boy, you talk about narrowing some things down.
Exactly, that's the point. Instead of the world, it gets narrower and narrower.
And now, within a matter of a minute, I've probably saved myself 3 days of troubleshooting.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because I will tell you that, with the mini split thing, and then some of the parts in there, I think what we wanted to talk about here is now, okay, so it says that it's maybe this particular part that might not be performing, right? This is something to look at. The next
it came down to the consensus was it was a sensor that's in the unit that might be bad. It's a particular sensor. I can't remember what it's called. It doesn't really matter. But I would have never been able to figure that out without a whole lot of research.
Without a huge diagram and God knows what in the whole manual that they don't sell. I don't give you. Anyways,
doesn't come with the instructions of the unit. Let's put it that way. Right?
But here is my next question. I'm going to walk you through how I would use it in this case. Okay.
Sure.
Now that now that we've got this somewhat narrowed down to a sensor, can you tell me what the function of that sensor is in this unit and why you think it's that way? And it will come back. The next thing is, how do I test that sensor to make sure that it's good? It'll probably come back and say, with a multimeter, here's the pins on it. Right. Here's the voltage that should be present at this point, at this stage, at that stage. And now you start to use your own intelligence before I start just throwing parts at something. Test AI and see what it knows about this part. And in many cases, it can get very specific to, okay, on the blue wire, it needs to be 5 volts. On this wire, it needs to be, this is the ground. It should be 12 volts or whatever. So what I'm saying here is, kind of walk through with AI your methodology of troubleshooting. And that's kind of what I've done. And you've kind of get into, that pattern of, here's how you use it. And it's kind of like somebody, you're talking to somebody, right? I mean, you kind of get to that point, like, bouncing stuff off of it. So,
yeah. And you just brought up a really good point. Even if you think about it, if you're talking to the quote expert guy, you would have said, well, how, you just brought it up and I think it's great. Well, how would I test that sensor? And then he would theoretically, if he knew, would actually tell you, like you just said, put your multimeter here, set it here, whatever. This is what it's supposed to be. And if it's not, then it is the part. Instead of, to your point, just throwing parts at it, you can actually ask it to like, what do
Right.
you know about that particular part?
Right.
What are its parameters to be operating in? And then you really can test it. And then you've got this kind of foolproof, it's not necessarily foolproof, but it's way
Well,
better than the world, right?
well,
You're much tighter.
here's a scenario that I can see happening is that its first inclination, and it could be right, is that it's a sensor. Okay, well now tell me a little bit about it. How do I test it? Okay, here you come back. It tests great. You put it back in AI. You tell AI, hey man, this thing is fine. It's working the way you described. I mean, it's the way I should have tested it. The way it performs. What could be next? Ooh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. Check this relay.
And then you
And
get the parameters on the
and,
relay.
and then same thing. And
Right.
let it start to narrow down because right now it's scraping all this information off of the web and all on all these discussion groups and things. So it's putting this together very fast and knowing exactly where you are in the circuit just based upon these conversations.
Right.
I
Right.
will tell you, I will tell you that I have seen some shows and things that they are actually uploading. They're talking to AI and diagnosing modern automobiles and uploading wiring diagrams to AI because they're behind paywalls. But let's say that you're a professional technician and you do have accessibility to all data or
Right.
Mitchell's or
Right.
whatever, but you have actually sent those diagrams to AI and let AI look at it, and it comes back. It's incredibly weird, saying it comes back and says, okay, that yellow wire coming out of the ignition switch needs to be 12 volts. This one's a sensor voltage at 5 volts across this relay. That blue wire should be, and it's like, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
is
Yep.
this is 2020. This is 2025, early 26. I can't imagine where this is going in 5 years.
Yeah. Even right now, it's a fabulous tool that you should, if you're having real
Absolutely.
issues, try it. You got nothing to lose, right? This is literally zero money out. I will say, and I said this before, and I'll say this again to you, John, because you've just said the same thing. This is a case where you want to ask questions with lots and lots of detail and information, because if you it's basically the more you can narrow down the scope, the better off it's going to do, because just like in your brain, the more information you have that's relevant, right? The more information that you have is relevant, the better the answer that's going to come out. And but it again, this is a tool. These large, where I personally am not using the pay products, not the pay. I'm just using the what I can download for free AI programs, and even then they're hugely helpful for a lot of things, just in if you need particularly really like generalized
Well,
information, you
you know,
know.
and I'll just give you one other. I'll just give you one other example here. Is that I was, my car. My car's close to 20 years old now. They've
Yep.
only made them for 3 years.
Yep.
I'm like, I got an issue with the automatic seat. When you take the key out, seat moves back and all this kind of stuff. Well, this thing stopped working. Guess what? I went to AI. It said, because I don't have the manual. I don't know it, but it comes right back and said, here's how to reset the whole thing. And if that, and I said, okay, well, it doesn't work out. Okay, well, underneath your left foot on the driver's side is the panel. Check these relays underneath there, you know, make sure that the wires are tight and all this stuff. And it kept going and going.
Which is great, particularly as things get older. The collective
It's
knowledge has decreased, right? If you think about it, people just don't. If you don't, like, it's kind of like anything. If you don't write it down and keep good notes, it's gone. But if somebody's put it into the internet at some point, it's still there so they can get it at it. You know what I mean? If you understand what I mean, like working on a say
Yeah.
that 20-year-old vehicle, are there any current mechanics that really understand that stuff? Not really, because everything's changed in that
Well, I
20-year
mean, you
period,
would need
right?
access to, you know, but but it was for the DIYer. This thing is a, a wonderful tool. I mean,
Yes.
it's incredible. I don't always trust it, but you know what? Like we were talking
Well,
about, boy, it can take this thing down to a good path to go find the solution to. So quickly. I don't know. I use it all the time for these things, especially if I have to go and if I'm working on somebody's washer or dryer or
oh yeah,
anything technical like
absolutely.
that. You'd be amazed at putting in model numbers and even down to serial numbers because all that
Oh yeah.
stuff would be on a Westinghouse website or behind,
Yep.
where you could dig around for days to find
You
that
could
stuff.
find it, but it'd take you forever. It'd
Exactly.
just take you forever. And that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think at that point, Johnny, we just basically say, do they do AI in the spaceship? I think they almost have to.
You gotta, right?
You gotta, you gotta,
That's-
you know, you gotta. So our point here is just use it, folks. It's out there. It's for free. Take it and use it.
yeah.
All right. With that, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We will get back to you. Tell us if you're using AI. Hell, we'd like to know.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
if there's been a particular one that's
Yeah.
kind of stumped you and you've come across, you've got a wild hair and typed it in and that's what came up with an answer for you. Tell us it's a yes or a no. But if not, folks, it's really easy to use. Use it. It's just there. It's free
Yeah,
largely.
and you guys might be using you can use AI to look up some current codes when you're doing some electrical, plumbing and things like that. Anyways.
Anyway, yeah, it's all out there. It's all out there.
So
All right. With that, Johnny, take us
all
home,
right,
baby.
folks. Stay safe. Have fun this week. Make lots of money. And we'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.